Okay, good evening and welcome. The time is now 4:34. I'd like to call the September 19th and 20th, 2024 meeting of the Energy Facility Siting Council to order. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Kent Howe,
Here.
Cindy Condon. Here. Ann Byer. Richard Devlin,
Here.
Katie Imes. Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Are there any agenda modifications?
Mr. Chair, there are no agenda modifications at this time.
Okay, thank you. I have the following announcements. Comment registration cards for tonight's hearing are available on the table in the back of the room. For council members and anyone addressing the council, please remember to state your name clearly and please do not use the speakerphone feature as it will create feedback. Please mute your phones, and if you are joining us by phone and receive a phone call, please hang up from this call and dial back in after finishing your other call. For those signed on to the webinar, please do not broadcast your webcam. For tonight's public hearing, there are 3 ways to let us know you're interested in providing comments to the council. For those in person, please fill out a registration card available on the table and submit to Nancy Hatch. For those using the WebEx, you will need to use the raise your hand feature. For those on the phone only, you'll need to press *3, which will alert us that you want to speak. And we'll go over those options again during that agenda item. If you want to receive future email notifications of council meetings, project milestones, or rulemakings through our Click Dimensions program, you can do so by clicking on the link in the agenda or on the council webpage. Look for the green box on the right-hand side of the page that says sign up for email updates. You are also welcome to access the online project mapping tool in any documents by visiting our website. Please note that the audio and video of this meeting is being recorded and may be posted to the council's website following the meeting. Energy Facility Council meetings shall be conducted in a respectful and courteous manner where everyone is allowed to state their positions at the appropriate times, consistent with council rules and procedures. Willful, accusatory, offensive, insulting, threatening, insolent, or slanderous comments which disrupt the council meeting are not acceptable. Pursuant to Oregon Administrative Rule 345-011-0080, any person who engages in unacceptable conduct which disrupts the meeting may be expelled. So we'll move on to let's see, we're not doing minutes. We'll do the August minutes at the next meeting. And so we're ready for the council secretary report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of project updates. First is the Yellow Rose Bush Energy Center. On August 30th, we received the preliminary application for that project. It's proposed as an 800 megawatt solar energy generation project and 800 megawatt battery storage on 8,000 acres or 12.5 square miles in exclusive farm use zone land in Wasco County. It is approximately 9 miles east of Maupin. And they do have an alternative transmission line proposed, which if that's continues to move forward, would also be a small component of it would be in Sherman County, but the vast majority of it is in Wasco County. The facility is proposed by Yellow Rose Bush Energy LLC, which is a subsidiary of Savion LLC, which is a division of the Royal Dutch Shell Company. The application is included on the project website, and because the preliminary application just came in, there's really no more updates than that. We will be reviewing completeness and working with reviewing agencies to help us in the near future. The next is the Buckley Solar Project. I've given you updates on this one previously. It is a solar project located in Sherman County, about 9 miles east of Tye Valley, 8 miles southwest of Grass Valley, on close to 8,000 acres or 12.3 square miles. It's on exclusive farm use zoned land. And the reason I'm bringing up this one up is because we have a public information meeting on the notice of intent next Tuesday in Grass Valley. I'm sorry, not next Tuesday, the following Tuesday, I only call. Thank you. So the notice has been sent out on that, it's on the project webpage. So yeah, we'll be having a public information meeting on that project. One thing I wanted to bring up was, recently, there has been some discussions about trying to add more hyperlinks into staff reports and other documents. So there are numerous examples of this within the staff reports. So I'm going to go through and tell you what those are. And then, whether or not you have kind of responses now or you want to think about it later, it'll be helpful to know, do you believe this was valuable or not? I think a lot of the conversation was providing hyperlinks if there are statutes and rules, and again, we may not be consistent with that, but that's on our radar to do. But I'll just go through the particular agenda items. So for Mist Amendment 13, which you'll be hearing about tonight, the staff report included as attachment 1, the draft proposed order, but rather than actually having that document, we included a hyperlink. So that and a couple of the other ones, that's not exactly what you were talking about, but it is an example of where we provided a hyperlink rather than the actual document. So the attachment 1 was not uploaded to the SharePoint site where we give you your information, but in that staff report, you can simply click on that link and it'll bring open the draft proposed order. So wanted to see if you liked that format or if you would rather have, when we provide attachments, the actual documents get uploaded along with that.
Councillor Condon?
I apologize. I think I had operator error, and tried it and didn't get the hyperlink or to work. So I wasn't sure there was a hyperlink there actually. So
Yeah, maybe at a break, we could take a look and make sure that it works for you, because that was the idea, is that you should be able to get that information.
Okay.
Relatively easy. I mean, it's on the website, but that's all it really does is takes you to, it opens up the link, which is on the webpage, which is the draft proposal.
yeah, I don't think I got anything, but I think it might have been operator error.
Okay.
So
And we did the exact same thing with the Wagon Trail Solar Project. So for that one, it was the proposed order rather than draft proposed order. We listed as attachment 1. Again, it was a link rather than the document. And then for Sunstone Solar, that one was also a link to the draft proposed order.
okay, I hate to admit operator error on the record, but there you go.
Fair. Well, I mean, it's good. And this is why we want to have these conversations to determine what's the best way to convey the information and the easiest way for you to get access to it.
Okay, right. Thank you for doing that. I know it is
From my standpoint, I load the stuff on so that I have it here, like tonight. If I didn't do that and it was hyperlink, then I'd go into the staff report, click on hyperlink. Then what happens? Am I able to kind of keep it handy?
Yeah, you can still, as it opens up, you would have to then save it. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah, so it would open up a document and then you could do file, save as, and save it to the same location, So again, it's really, is that easier or harder for you, to get access to that information?
I think that's gonna be harder, like tonight, if I was needing to go and do this while I'm trying to run a meeting and that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
I kind of like it, maybe both ways.
Okay, well, that's good feedback too.
Okay.
Another example in the contested case rulemaking, so in the staff report, Tom makes reference to a prior staff report on that rulemaking. So rather than attach it or, create a big excerpt from that in the new staff report, he just put a link into the old staff report, same thing.
Okay.
And then finally, tomorrow's wildfire standard, Sarah put in a hyperlink to the actual wildfire standard. So this was, I think, more on the lines of, what you had originally asked for is we make reference to, in this case, the wildfire standard, which is in Division 22. And you can click on the link in the staff report and it'll open up that standard from the administrative tools page. Okay, so again, if you have feedback, which, thank you, Chair Howe, for heard that. But if anybody else has feedback, either tonight or tomorrow, or just anytime in the future, again, the whole point is whatever the best way to make it work for you, that's what we're gonna do. And then the last thing on my list is the next council meeting, which is October 24th and 25th. So we have not set or put an agenda or a draft agenda together for Chair Howe to look at. We believe it would likely be just a Friday, so just the October 25th. And there are no locational drivers. So we've got several rulemakings and then another agenda item. That could be done either in Salem or entirely virtual, but we will put together a draft agenda next week. Chair Howard, send it to you for your input and verification on it.
Okay.
But we will need to have a meeting, it's just exactly the details. And that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. So the next item is a review of mitigation plan amendments. It's an action item. We have Ashwood's compliance officer that will present the recommendations for this compliance for habitat mitigation.
Who's gonna go over this? Slide?
Say again?
Did we wanna go over this slide too this week?
I'm doing this one is. No, we don't have any, sorry, I thought that one was eliminated.
Okay.
We don't have any incidents to report.
Okay, so this is Ashwood's compliance officer. We'll be going over a review of the mitigation plan amendments that are proposed for 3 wind facilities. To provide some background on mitigation plans, when impacts to wildlife habitat occur because of an FSEC jurisdictional facility, the certificate holder must meet the goals of both the Fish and Wildlife Habitat Standard and ODFW's Fish and Wildlife Habitat Mitigation Policy. Habitat mitigation plans, which I'll refer to as HMPs, describe how a certificate holder will meet the mitigation obligation for the facility for those habitat impacts. To allow for adaptive management of the mitigation sites, HMPs typically include a clause that allows for amendments to the HMP from time to time. And review and approval of those amendments is delegated by council to the department. The department is providing council the opportunity today to review and vote on the proposed amendments. For the proposed amendments we'll discuss today, they are all facilities that are operated by Avangrid, the certificate holder. There are 3 separate HMPs that are being amended. The Golden Hills Wind Facility, Leaning Juniper 2A and 2B, which is a combined HMP, and the Montague Wind Facility. The amendment request for all 3 of these HMPs is intended to facilitate routine monitoring and adaptive management of the ecological conditions at the mitigation sites. All 3 mitigation sites are directly adjacent to one another and are owned and managed in the same way. So that's why we're proposing amendments to all 3 plans for consistency and for management. The department recommendations are based on ongoing consultation with ODFW. We have met with the certificate holder and ODFW at the mitigation sites to assess current ecological conditions and to determine if the certificate holder's proposed amendments are appropriate. This slide is a vicinity map of where the mitigation areas are located. Like I said, they're all together in the same property that's just segmented for each facility. But they are generally kind of southeast of Arlington. And the mitigation properties are in undeveloped, uncultivated land, but are adjacent to cultivated land. This is an aerial view of the 3 mitigation properties that are addressed in the HMPs. The Golden Hills Wind, Montague Wind, and Leaning Juniper 2A and 2B wind, color coded here. The Golden Hills HMA is approximately 12 acres. The Montague Winds HMA in the green is 65 acres, and Leaning Juniper in blue is 94 acres. And as a reminder, that Leaning Juniper is a combined mitigation area for both the 2A and 2B phases of the project with one combined HMP. There are 2 different amendments that pertain to all 3 HMPs, and then we'll go through some amendments that are specific to individual HMPs. So changes proposed to all 3 HMPs are really for consistency. The first issue is the HMP language stipulates that a fire management plan be prepared for the HMA. However, the certificate holder is requesting instead to simply incorporate fire management practices into the HMP itself instead of creating a separate plan. The proposed change would be to remove the reference to the fire management plan and replace it with fire control management practices that are reviewed by the department. Issue 2 pertains to the monitoring schedule. So all 3 HMPs have a different monitoring schedule. They were all implemented at different times, so they're not synced up in terms of when they need to go out and actually do the monitoring to report on the ecological conditions and management of the site. So this is just simply trying to get the same schedule so that all 3 can be surveyed and monitored at the same time, and to update the language in the monitoring requirements. The current monitoring schedule would actually reduce the monitoring frequency to just once every 5 years upon completion of an initial 10-year annual monitoring phase. ODFW and the department agree that once every 5 years is not frequent enough to really keep a good pulse on the ecological conditions out there, and to, look for things like unauthorized grazing or, unauthorized access or fire, things like that. So the recommended change is to update the monitoring schedule to a semi-annual, which would be every other year frequency for all facilities, and that would be on the same year for all 3 facilities.
Councilor Condon?
So, Cindy Condon, for the record, on issue 1, are other habitat management plans, do they incorporate a fire management plan? Is this unusual for?
It's not typical. There's some variation of if it's a plan versus just general fire management practices. These plans were all kind of recycled with each other because they're the same certificate holder, and so that's why they all say fire management plan. But in general, it's not necessarily a standard or typical practice to include a completely separate fire management plan for an HMA. General fire management practices are what would be included in the plan anyway. So this is just kind of updating it to simplify and incorporate everything into the same document.
So I haven't probably been as deep into the habitat mitigation plans, but so a fire management plan for a, mitigation area. What does it entail?
Yeah, so this would be things that are generally done concurrently with the annual monitoring. So it would be making sure that there are no signs of wildfire out there. Someone going out and checking to see if there are any brush removal that needs to happen or things that would potentially cause a fire. If preventing people from entering the site with vehicles that could ignite a fire in tall vegetation, things like that, just kind of just generally monitoring and managing fire risk. It's not something that is a really active practice. It's more of kind of passive management to just make sure that there's not increased fire risk at the site and preventing activities that would cause it.
So, and I think that was maybe one of my concerns is I think we're in a time that passive might not be quite good enough, or active enough. And I guess I just want to be sure that somebody even knows to look in the HMP for the fire management plan. You know, if it's not typical or it's being moved, it seems like we'll have for projects then a wildfire management plan separate and distinct from this. Is that correct?
Yeah, so this would be a separate fire management plan from the facility fire management plan. This would just be specific to the HMA only. And so this is really implemented by typically a contractor that's doing the monitoring, the ecological condition monitoring for the HMA. And they're also checking for, signs of, use, or if they need to put up extra fencing to keep people out, to prevent fire from happening, things like that. So it's separate management from the facility.
It's not.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
So now we will get into the individual amendments. So for the Golden Hills Wind HMP, the certificate holder is proposing to remove 0.62 acres of supplemental sagebrush planting that was originally proposed in the first draft of the HMP. The HMA has demonstrated natural sagebrush recruitment after the removal of grazing. And that's been a longer term enhancement action from longer than the area has been managed for Golden Hills specifically. The certificate holder has held this entire area, which includes all three of these HMAs plus additional acreage for the purpose of future mitigation. And it's had grazing exclusion for a much longer period of time than the HMA has been part of the Golden Hills project. So they're actually seeing natural sagebrush recruitment because of that. And because of the way that they're managing the vegetation out there, it's actually a really healthy bunch grass and sagebrush ecosystem that has pretty good forb productivity, and that's allowing the sagebrush to be released where, typically on some other sites, we see a lot more annual grass pressure that would choke out any sagebrush seedlings. And so the way that the site is being managed over the long term is actually producing the desired ecological outcome without having to do manual planting of sagebrush. So based on our site visit and the monitoring data that the certificate holder provided, the department and ODFW agree that the site is meeting the success criteria already that would have resulted from the sagebrush planting. So the certificate holder would like to remove that requirement for now. And then, we have recommended that they add language into the HMP requiring them to do either a supplemental sagebrush planting or an annual grass treatment to release those sagebrush seedlings that would naturally recruit. If the monitoring reports do in the future show a decline in natural sagebrush recruitment. So that would be demonstrated over time through the monitoring, so we could track if things start to decline, then we would do another amendment and require them to do some sort of uplift to keep that condition in the desired state.
So Chair, good question.
Question, comment?
So we maintain the right to record, if we see it just from the reports, and we have to go through an amendment as opposed to maybe have language that says we have the right to have additional measures or change that, we'd have to go through an amendment, that's the option.
It's not the only option. So the way that the language is currently proposed for the amendment is that, it's basically says if, routine monitoring shows a decline in sagebrush recruitment, then, ODFW and the department will go out and assess what the source of that is, whether it's, annual grass pressure or some other issue, and then determine what the appropriate action would be to get sagebrush back into the desired condition. And then once that happens, then, we would do basically what we're doing now, update the language to say now there will be sagebrush planting in whatever, acreage prescription that the department and ODFW think is appropriate.
Thank you.
The next HMP amendment is for Leaning Juniper 2A and 2B. This issue is that the HMP for this facility includes a requirement to conduct avian use surveys every 5 years. This was originally proposed as part of an enhancement action to basically demonstrate ecological uplift by tracking if avian use changed over time. So if the idea was if avian use increased over time, or we were seeing more native species using the site, then that was an ecological indicator of uplift. But ODFW and the department agree that now, after they've conducted these surveys for a while, it's really not providing a lot of benefit. And the other HMAs that are adjacent don't have this requirement. So we've agreed that it should not be an ongoing requirement any longer, and to just remove that language from the HMP. For the Montague Wind HMP, an artificial raptor nest structure was originally proposed as an enhancement action. Based on experience from the department and ODFW on a general lack of utilization for these types of structures in the region, ODFW has recommended some revisions to the nesting structure plan itself. So changes, specifying what has worked in other areas based on available data in terms of the design of the structure, placement, things like that. So they've recommended that the certificate holder include in the plan itself literature-based design specifications for the structure, and then the certificate holder plans to install that either in 2025 or 2026. 2025 being the goal, and then 2026 kind of being the fallback if there's an issue with contracting or something. But This is really just an update to make sure that we're using the best available science to say what actually works for placement and design of these structures. That concludes the overview of the proposed amendments, and now we will move to a vote for council. Please note that there will be 3 separate votes required, one for each HMP amendment. So we will begin with a motion to approve. Mr. Chair, I move that.
That's done.
No, first time.
Any further questions or discussion from council? Let me see if anybody that's remote.
I just have those two.
Okay. Okay, then, as Ash said, we need 3 separate motions here that we'll vote on. Is there anyone that? Vice Chair Condon?
Mr. Chair, I move that the council approve the amendments to the Golden Hills Wind Project Habitat Mitigation Plan as presented and recommended by staff.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Secretary Cornett, could you please call the roll? That was Councilor Devlin that seconded.
Got that. Councilmember Byer online now.
No.
Cindy Condon,
Yes.
Richard Devlin,
Yes.
Kent Howe,
Yes.
Katie Hines.
Yes.
Motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so we're ready for the second motion.
Chair Hall.
Vice Chair Condon.
Mr. Chair, I move that the council approve the amendments to the Leaning Juniper 2A wind tower facility and Leaning Juniper 2B wind tower facility habitat mitigation plans, or plan, sorry,
Okay,
as presented and recommended by staff.
okay, we've got a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Secretary Cornett, could you please call the roll?
Katie Hines,
Yes.
Richard Devlin,
Yes.
Kent Howe,
Yes.
Cindy Condon.
Yes.
Motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Okay, ready for the last one?
Mr. Chair, I move that the council approve the amendment to the Montague wind power facility mitigation plan as presented and recommended by staff.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we've got motion and second. Secretary Cornett, could you please call the roll?
Richard Devlin,
Aye.
Kent Howe,
Yes.
Katie Hines,
Yes.
Cindy Condon.
Yes.
Motion carries, Mr. Chair.
Okay,
Nope, Katie has,
thank you, Ms. Woods. Does that complete this item?
Katie has her hand.
Oh,
Chair,
Councilor Dwight?
yes, I just had a quick question for Ash. I was just curious if we would see more of this kind of. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. If we would see more of these kinds of amendments to other mitigation plans, or is this something unique?
Yeah, this is Ashwoods. Yeah, we're currently on an annual cycle reviewing the various HMPs for all of the facilities. And as we identify needs to update things in the mitigation plans based on changing ecological conditions, or things like monitoring schedules that might need to be adjusted. There will be additional HMP updates. It's part of the process is intended to allow for adaptive management, and through amendment of the HMPs, we are looking at a few different facilities right now that could potentially need some HMP amendments. So It will be an ongoing thing and we continue to review them annually to see if an amendment is needed.
Mr. Chair.
Councilor Cornet. All right, sorry.
For the record, Todd Cornett, and I believe this is true, and I'll look to Sarah and Ash if I'm wrong. I believe all the habitat mitigation plans, council has delegated the authority to staff to amend those. So we have the authority to do that, but those also can come to council. We believe it's important, for these to be reviewed also by council, so you're tracking them. But I think my point is, if you ever get to the point where it feels like it's unnecessary and a little pro forma, we don't have to bring these to you unless the condition requires it. But again, I believe that most of or all of the conditions are delegate the authority to staff. But I think there's interest in council in seeing this, and we think there's value to it as well. So, but just to know that, you do have options on whether you want to see these or not.
Okay. Yeah. Vice Chair Con.
Chair Howe, members of the council, Cindy Condon for the record. One, I find this very useful. I know for me, what we go through in preparation for the meetings, we get into proposed or draft proposed orders and what get into that detail. And often I don't review the details of all of the plans themselves. So I really appreciate the work that's done and to bring it to council. So, I certainly, having staff be responsible to it is fine, but knowing about it is pretty important, I think. I have a question before I leave this is, do the compliance reviews that we do we go to the habitat mitigation areas and actually see them as opposed to just relying on reports?
Yes, so as part of our annual inspection process, when we inspect each facility annually, we also inspect each habitat mitigation area. So this year, visiting these HMAs was part of that process. And then it also aligned with some of the proposed amendments, but we do go out and see them to make sure that things are looking how the monitoring reports say that they do. And it's, great to have kind of an on the ground perspective of what these areas really look like.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's kind of trust but verified, but
Exactly.
works. Thank you.
Kate has her hand up.
Before we wrap things up, just to go back to Katie's question earlier, in addition to the habitat mitigation plan updates, we also, for adaptive management purposes, will from time to time update noxious weed plans, the revegetation plans, and the wildlife mitigation and monitoring plans. So those plans are also subject to amendments from time to time, depending on management needs or changing conditions.
Thank you, Ms. Wood. Councilor Ives, did that take care of your question?
Yes, Chair, thank you. And I just wanted to add to the conversation that I do find this, and I find it helpful because there are so many projects and so many mitigation plans, and you guys are doing so much work behind the scenes, and it really does keep the council up to date on changes that are happening. And so I do appreciate these updates. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion from council? Okay, we've got a 5:30 time certain public hearing, and it's 5:13, so I will recess for 17 minutes and come back at 5:30.
That's good. Yes, you're on.
Ready? Okay, I'll call us back to order. The next agenda item is the Mist Underground Natural Gas Storage Facility request for Amendment 13. Draft proposed order public hearing, and will include an information portion provided by Senior Signing Analyst Kathleen Sloan, who will provide a brief overview of the agenda item and the request, and a public hearing in which I will serve as the presiding officer. Ms. Sloan, please proceed with the information portion of the agenda.
Thank you, Chair Howell. For the record, my name is Kathleen Sloan. I am a senior siting analyst with the Oregon Department of Energy, and I am here to present the information item that precedes the public hearing and public comment period that will come after my presentation. So I'm going to go through this presentation fairly quickly because the emphasis for tonight is the public hearing and the opportunity for public comment. Next slide. So just really quickly, as an overview, I'm going to provide the overview of the proposed amendment, the existing facility, and the draft proposed order. And then I will hand it back over to Chair Howe, who will run the hearing. And in that hearing, the public will have an opportunity to comment. The applicant will have an opportunity to provide information or comment, and council will also have an opportunity to comment. Next slide. So very quickly, this is just an overview slide of where we are and our process from amendment request from the preliminary request submitted by the certificate holder all the way through the process of a final order should council approve one. To kind of skim through it, the preliminary request for amendment came into the department in March of 2024, it went through a completeness review, request for additional information, and the certificate holder, who is Northwest Natural Gas Company, provided that additional information, and we determined that the application was complete at the end of July of 2024, and asked the certificate holder to submit that amendment, that complete amendment request, which they did. And then we issued what is the draft proposed order on August 15th and issued a public notice on both the draft proposed order and also the complete request for amendment and opened it up for public comment. That public comment period extended from August 15th. It's still open. It will be open until the end of this public hearing unless council extends it for some reason. The public comment period will close at the close of this public hearing tonight. And that is where we are in the process. Once the public hearing has concluded, we'll do a council review of the draft proposed order, presumably at the next council meeting in October. After that council review, we will prepare a proposed order. The department will issue that proposed order with a public notice and an opportunity to request a contested case. So if you look at the chevron up to the right, you'll see it says possible contested case. It's important to note that an amendment request is subject to council review of a contested case request. And they have the authority to approve or deny that requested contested case. And they will do that in that time frame. And then they will make a decision on a final order and a site certificate. So one of the things I guess I would emphasize is we are in a public comment period now. But the draft proposed order and the proposed order are documents the department prepares on behalf of council. Council issues the final order. So we have more steps in our process, and tonight, like I said, is our public hearing, which will conclude the public comment period on the draft proposed order. Next slide. So very quickly, I'm going to give an overview of the facility and the requested amendment. The MIST facility, it's a natural gas underground storage facility. The original site certificate was approved in 1981, and the site certificate has been amended 12 times. This is the 13th amendment request. It is consisting of primarily related and supporting facilities such as compressors, pipelines, control equipment, dehydration, auxiliary systems, most of which are currently located at the Miller Station. And then there's other facilities that are related to gathering lines or transmission lines for natural gas storage reservoirs and maintenance facilities for operations staff. Next slide. So this is just an overview of the facility. It has a very large site boundary of 5,472 acres. It's comprised of multiple parcels. What's important, I think, in this slide is this is the approved facility. So you're gonna see that in Amendment 11, a pipeline was approved, a power line was approved. There are developments at the North Mist Compressor Station and the Miller Station as shown on this map that were approved as part of Amendment 11. And in that request for Amendment 11, the capacity for the facility was approved to be 635 million standard cubic feet permitted of daily natural gas throughput through these injection storage wells. Next slide. So this is just an overview side-by-side comparison. So you can see the changes that are being proposed to the facility as a result of this requested amendment for Amendment 13. So as you see, the larger site boundary, there is no change in the site boundary. There is a change in the micrositing area around North Mist and the Miller Station. It is an estimated, I believe it is 63 or 65.1 acres of temporary impact and 27.7 acres of permanent impact associated with RFA 13. So in spite of that large site boundary, the actual project footprint is fairly limited. It's going to increase that MMSCFD rate 200 of daily throughput. The compression equipment is also going to increase in its capacity, and there is proposed development of these 4 storage, natural gas underground storage reservoirs. Will be to develop this crater reservoir, which is already approved, but hasn't been developed apparently, and then add these 3 additional new storage reservoirs. They're gonna upgrade and replace existing electrical line and also transmission pipeline. They're gonna add additional 2.6. We're gonna have 4 new areas encompassing approximately 31 acres, which will be temporary and for construction activities. One of those will be converted into a permanent addition to Miller Station is actually added to the site boundary. Next slide. So this is kind of a visual representation of everything that I just described. I'll show some close-ups. I think what's important to note in this one is, the facility is located between where we are here in Clatskanie and the town of Mist. And some of this infrastructure that's on the left is already in existence. So the request for Amendment 11 installed the pipeline and approved the North Mist Compressor Station area with one of the reservoirs. And where it almost looks like a bird or something up there. Thank you, Nancy. I don't have the pointer. That's the area where the additional reservoirs would be installed. And the North Mist Compressor Station is the little yellow football area with the orange, right there. And then the yellows are all the temporary laydown areas that are associated. So this is kind of an overview slide. The next couple of slides will give you a little bit closer view. Next slide. So this is just a little bit more detail on what is being proposed in the 2 primary areas, which is the Miller Station and the North Mist Compressor Station. So this one is an overview of what is being proposed at Miller Station. So the new buried power line alignment, again, it's to replace and extend some of the power line that runs from the highway up to the Miller Station. The orange is what is an existing approved facility for Miller Station. And that little yellow lemon shape is the 7.5 acres that they're gonna add to the Miller Station site boundary after construction, after it's used as a temporary storage area for the facility. So next slide, again, this is another close-up of the well development or the underground storage well development that's being proposed. These are the aspects that they are proposing as part of this improvement, what they're calling the Mist Resiliency Project. The developer will, or the certificate holder will talk a little bit more about that. So again, there's this 2.6 miles of underground transmission line that will basically connect these storage facilities. So there is a pipeline that will connect the Newton well pad to the Stegosaur well pad, or well, to the Medicine well. And what that allows them to do is use them for input and output. There will be 3 reciprocating gas-fired compressors installed, 2 dehydration trains, new compressor with associated equipment. And then again, they're adding 4 new buildings, which will include an O&M building, a power distribution center, a compressor building, and a dehydration regeneration building, and all the associated equipment. Next slide. So this is an important point to make, both for the public and for council. Everything that's proposed in Amendment 13 is open for council's review, but it is important to, I guess, clarify the scope of council's review. This facility is a natural gas underground storage facility. Not all of the components in this facility are under FSEC council's purview with the site certificate. Only certain parts of it are. So one of the things that's important for commenters to know is in our amendment requests, we are not here to rehash the past. So it is not open for comment, all of the things that council has previously approved for this facility. So the facility is approved as it is. What we're looking at is what is proposed in the request for Amendment 13. Also important to clarify is the role that we have versus other state agencies or entities with the storage wells. The underground storage wells are outside of FSEC's or authority and the site certificate. They're not governed by the site certificate. They're actually governed by the Department of Geology and Mineral Industries. Thank you, I was forgetting that. So they are the ones that permit and regulate the actual natural gas storage well. Same with the well heads. And also this facility and our review has nothing to do with fracking of any kind. So it's just really important to be clear about what is not in our purview or our council's purview. And for that reason, well, people might have comments. There's not a whole lot we can do with comments if they're made to aspects of the facility that are outside of the FSEC site certificate. So it's just important to clarify. People have questions, we can follow up on that later. Next slide. So now I'm going to give a really quick overview of the draft proposed order. As I had noted before, the purpose of this meeting is really the public hearing, public comment. We will have a council review of the entire draft proposed order, but I'm just going to skim through this very quickly. There were several standards that we, in our departmental review, did not recommend any new conditions and did not identify any substantive changes in factor law that would have required any additional new conditions, different conditions than what already exists in the site certificate. And those standards are listed on this slide. And the reference of where they are in the draft proposed order. Next slide. And this slide, again, is to kind of condense what I'm going to go over next. These are standards in which we did have new conditions and new recommendations. However, most of these were what I would say generally standardized requirements, such as an updated inadvertent discovery plan for cultural resources, updated to current Q25, $24, for retirement and financial assurance. things like that, where there wasn't a whole lot of change in factor law that would have required a substantial change in a new condition, but there might have been an adjustment in an existing condition or to reflect that change. So next slide. So where I'm gonna go next is really just to focus on a selection of standards that we thought would be of particular interest, and also that did include conditions that were to address impacts that were specific to this amendment request. So I'm gonna start with soil protection standard. And so we had a couple of things that were, I would say, unique in this proposal is the certificate holder is proposing to use what is called horizontal directional drilling. We're gonna say HDD for short. And that proposal for HDD does have a lot of activities that will be ground disturbing. And so one of the things that the certificate holder has developed the HDD to do is to basically go under and around both Linden Creek and Lyons Creek for the power line replacement. And they have an approved HDD inadvertent return response plan, which is to address any potential return that might happen from the use of HDD. They have worked very closely with ODFW in the placement of where they would enter and exit with the use of that HDD to avoid any impact. And the intent of that is really to avoid any impacts to those creeks by going in at a buffer distance from the stream and then drilling under and around, underneath, and then come back out. And then that will be done to lay the conduit and also pull the line through. So in that, what we recommended are new soil protection conditions that require this final approved HDD response plan to be implemented and adhered to as part of using HDD as part of construction. And that is includes information on the slurry that's used, which is a bentonite clay, which is non-hazardous. And then there are measures that they have taken in BMPs that they have in place to make sure that there are no releases. And like they said, both Linden Creek is a protected stream. So that was one of the reasons why this proposal includes all of these things to avoid impacts. Next slide. And if council has any questions, please interrupt me. Okay, I see question.
Councilor Condon.
Quick question.
Oh.
Thank you, Chair Howe, and thank you for the presentation. Have we, reviewed horizontal directional drilling, the use of it in very many projects that do we have, what's the experience there?
Okay, it predates my time here, but it was heavily reviewed as part of Amendment 11.
Okay.
So there was a whole geotechnical, there's a whole process that was undertaken by the certificate holder as part of Amendment 11, where it was also used. So they have experience doing it, and it has been used on this facility in the past,
And
just a different location.
okay, thank you. And it's our experience with review of it. So we're comfortable with horizontal drilling and soil protection. We can do that.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Okay,
Chair Howe?
so, I'm sorry.
Yes, Councilor Hine.
Yes, thank you, Katie Imes. My question kind of piggybacks on Councilor Condon's question, and that is that the HDD plan there is a plan already in place, it sounds like, and has already been approved through FSAT, and they will be updated. Is that correct?
There was an approved HDD plan for a prior amendment. What they'll need to finalize, they've submitted to us their HDD plan. And I think we need to have it finalized as part of that, yeah. So there might be some additional detail that is needed to flesh out that plan, but as far as a method and a practice of conducting this type of activity, this HDD method. The certificate holder has experience doing it. They have an established plan for how they do it. It's gone through rigorous review as part of Amendment 11, that same approach. So I don't see it being, you know, situationally, it'll be different, like the circumstances on the ground might be a little different, but the process itself is fairly established, is what I would say. And we can talk more about this when council does their comments and review too. I don't wanna beleaguer it at this point of my presentation, but as long as it's clear. Okay. But thank you. All right. So artificial wildlife, like I said, there's gonna be approximately a little under 64 acres of temporary and a little under 28 of permanent is the estimate. Across several types of habitat. I think one of the things that's important to know about this area in particular is that it's all occurring within active, basically area that's actively managed for logging and forestry in general. There are mostly category 3 impacts or the permanent impacts. There is a habitat mitigation plan to be implemented at a designated habitat mitigation area. And so we have recommended just additional conditions on this amendment to make sure that there is a final approved restoration of temporary impacts plan and that there is a final approved HMA and HMP prior to construction. So they have the basics of it. They've submitted draft plans. And again, a lot of it is to clarify final impacts, appropriate mitigation measures, and where exactly it will be. And they're looking at alternatives for their HMA. They have more than one option, but they have not finalized, in my understanding, where that will be. Okay, next slide. Public services. I think, these were just some basic facts that we thought were important about where the water might come from and where, because in the past there was a water use that was permitted temporarily for Amendment 11. And I think the important part to stress is that is not what they're doing for Amendment 13. They've identified that they can get the water from a third-party vendor or they're, and that most of the water again will be for construction. Be a minimal amount of water needed for operations, which will be mostly just to supply the operations and maintenance building. Because once the O&M building is built, they will have 12 full-time staff manning that area, which currently is an unmanned station apparently, so or minimally. And then just some basic information on the Clatskanie RFPD. There is a requirement in our recommendations that an agreement be entered into between the certificate holder and Clatskanie Rural Fire Protection. RFPD.
Fire protection district.
Okay. To pay a proportionate share to upgrade the pump at Fleming Pond, and that's because if there were a fire, that's apparently the source of where they would need to get emergency water to do firefighting. And so in order to be able to do that, they need to upgrade the pump. And so this was part of the agreement that they're entering into. So we want to see that agreement formalized, and we made it a recommended condition for public services. On to the next, wildfire. This is the first time this facility has undergone review under our wildfire prevention and risk mitigation standard. And it is a couple of interesting things. The overall risk is moderate to high. It is a heavily forested area. It's managed for forest. As a result, it actually falls within some of the ODF area of what is what they call like industrial fire caution level and fire season requirements. Some of that information was included in their wildfire mitigation plans for that reason, and it might look a little different than maybe what you've seen before, because this is honestly, I think the first one that we have done that's within it's inside an area that is subject to these ODF requirements in this IFPL. So might look a little different, but we do have the construction and operation plans. Includes the use of these ODF inspection forms or something comparable if the department so approves. Next slide. Waste minimization, we included this one because there will be a decommissioning of existing material that needs to be recycled, and Northwest Natural has its own waste management plan that has a heavy emphasis on scrap and recycling and how to process materials. The construction activities alone are gonna generate some non-recyclable waste, which is planned to go to Coffin Gate landfill outside of Corvallis. And then they have a Northwest Natural Waste Management Plan for their organization. And it requires that their facilities follow that plan, and those plans include both solid and recycling waste management plans, with the same goal as ours, which is to reduce the amount of waste and recycle as much as possible. So they've submitted their plan or recommending that they require that they adhere to it. Next one. So these are two standards that we don't often talk about because they apply to carbon-based facilities, and this is a natural gas facility. The standard for non-generating facilities that emit carbon, it is important to point out that this is a non-generating facility in our definition because we're not generating any electricity from this facility. So but we do have a change in equipment that is gonna result in an increase in the CO2. And so what this slide is showing is how that offset is estimated or calculated. This all has to be trued up and refined based on final design prior to construction. So these are their best estimates, but they could be subject to change, but it kind of shows you how this offset is calculated. And so it's that estimated CO2 minus allowable CO2, that remaining amount, like for North Mist, it's that 175 tons of CO2 over 30 years. That's the required reduction amount. So that is what needs to be offset under the next standard. So what we're asking for this standard is just that they prove and provide documentation to support their calculations for CO2 emissions minus allowable to come up with their calculated. So this is their best guess for now. It will get trued up before construction. Yes.
Sure, Hal.
Vice Chair Condon.
Thank you, Cindy Condon, for the record. Just a couple things about this issue. And I don't claim to be an expert, but I'm hoping Northwest Natural might speak to it a bit. Because of the addition of a relatively short, over 2 mile pipeline, it's my understanding that pipelines can leak emissions. And that isn't covered here as something that's calculated. I don't know if they leak, but I've heard and read a lot about that, and I would like to, I guess, have confirmation that pipelines are not a source of emissions. And point out that the importance of the offset rate that I think we're gonna deal with tomorrow and reset it. Our offset is just very, very low, and it's my understanding that Northwest Natural is adopting the offset, the financial offset as a.
Well, we get to that on the next slide.
Okay. And I just wanna bring that up. It has been kind of a hot issue for me that our offset is so low. And I think we should keep that in mind. Thank you.
All right, next slide. So the other standard that relates is this offset requirement for the means of compliance for the non-generating facilities. So that so they have done a calculations that shows that they're gonna be in exceedance of what's allowable CO2. And what Councilmember Condon was just referring to is the rate in which they calculate what that dollar amount will be. And it's the monetary path payment. So Northwest Natural has opted in the past to do the monetary path payment for the facility. And they have reaffirmed that in the RFA 13, the request for amendment 13. They have previously identified the Climate Trust as the recipient of that offset amount. And they reaffirmed that as well. What is important to note is what Councilmember Condon was getting at is that estimated 61,000 with the asterisk next to it is based upon the existing carbon offset rate, which is $4.27 per ton of CO2. So that would be the rate. That's what that number is based on. The new rate that's being considered by council is $6.40 per ton. At the time council would approve a final order, should they approve a final order on this amendment request, it will be whatever rate is in effect at that time. So assuming that you would adopt that new rate prior to the issuance of a final order, should a final order be approved, that rate is the new rate is what's gonna apply. And I think that's the important part, is that it will kick in as soon as council approves it. So it does require, again, documentation. This is what we're recommending in our conditions, is that we get, backup verification prior to construction of the calculations, the amounts, the actual CO2, and then documentation that shows that this payment has been made in full to the designated recipient of the Climate Trust. And then again, it also requires annual reporting. So they actually have to monitor and measure the actual versus what was predicted and do those adjustments accordingly.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Counselor Devlin.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just by way of reference, in a previous life on the Northwest Power and Conservation Council, there was discussion of the issue of leakage from natural gas systems. And to be honest, to some degree, they, like any large facilities like this, and it's not the pipelines, there will be some leakage, but the evidence we had, it was Northwest Natural was one of the better maintained systems in the United States. So the leakage was significantly less than it was in some areas. The question I have is, PacifiCorp and PGE both are required not to generate any electricity from fossil fuels after 1940. Now, renewable natural gas, which is, to be honest, a fairly limited source, may be still used under circumstances. But I understand that, some of the pumping systems at NIST are actually for PG&E. Has there been any discussion about how that might change after 1940? And they're actually required to meet some interim requirements before 1940 in terms of reduction in fossil fuels.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes.
So I just want to bring up a procedural kind of question. I think we're delving into a later part of this agenda item. So council will have an opportunity to make comments and ask questions that the certificate holder can respond to later on. But this is first and foremost a public comment opportunity for the public and the certificate holder. So we'd like to kind of provide these type of things to give you a sense of what we think are the more interesting or big ticket items. But I don't want to delve into a lot of conversation and back and forth because again, it takes away time from the public who's waiting to comment. So if you have a clarification question, that's great. But I think I would really appreciate holding off on any kind of detailed questions or comments until we have the council's review or the council's opportunity to provide comments later on in the agenda item, if that's okay.
Yeah, that will be fine. I'll bring up the question then.
Okay. All right. So in the interest of getting through this, okay, so on the next slide. the last standard that I'm gonna go over is just the removal fill. There were 19 wetlands identified. There are gonna be some what are being identified as temporary impacts, and the certificate holder is working with Department of State Lands. They would like to apply for, and they believe they are eligible for, what is called a general authorization for temporary impacts, which is in lieu of a removal fill. And it has to do, there's a certain process that DSL allows, certain types of restoration work are required, goes through a pretty rigorous process from DSL in order to determine whether or not you're eligible for a general authorization, and then also the remediation that they have to do immediately afterwards to ensure that those are temporary impacts and monitored. So what we identified is that there is a potential to require a removal fill because there'd be more than the threshold of impacted acres of wetland. So they'll either need a removal fill permit or a general authorization. DSL can do either path. And so they're gonna pursue that. My understanding is that the certificate holder wants to pursue the general authorization in lieu of removal fill. And so we've just required, they have to do one or the other. They have to provide one of the other in documentation to us prior to construction. So that is gonna be it for my overview of the DPO. We did recommend that council approve it with the recommended conditions, either new or amended. And then the next slide is important. And this is just before we launch into the public comment period and the public hearing, I do need to read something. Okay, so Chair Howe will discuss the type of comments that may be eligible to be evaluated in a contested case. But before that, I wanted to make sure that everyone knows that there are some key differences between an application and an amendment regarding a contested case proceeding. A contested case is not a mandatory step in the amendment process. I think I noted that earlier. In order to justify a contested case proceeding, an issue must be raised, and it must be a significant issue of fact or law that is reasonably likely to affect council's determination that a standard is not met. When reviewing requests for a contested case, the council has three options. One, they can hold a contested case if they believe an issue was raised and would reasonably likely affect their determination that a standard was met. Or two, remand a proposed order back to the department to make changes to conditions or findings regarding a raised issue. Or three, deny the request because it did not meet one of the threshold requirements. We included in our public notice a link to a YouTube video that describes the differences between a contested case and an application versus an amendment. And that is basically to help inform the public in both preparing and submitting their comments, but also, you know, we had a couple of comments submitted today that requested a contested case. And it, just so people know, this is not the time in the process to request the contested case. That comes once the proposed order and the opportunity to request a contested case, that notice comes out. So hold your contested case requests if that's what you want. There is a process for it, but it is important that I read that. So I think I am now done with my presentation, and thank you very much for your time and patience, and I will hand it back to Chair Howe to run the public hearing.
Thank you, Ms. Sloan. Good presentation. This is the public hearing on the draft proposed order on the request for Amendment 13 for the Nest Underground Natural Gas Storage Facility. I, Kent Howe, Energy Facility Siting Council Chair, am serving as the presiding officer for this hearing. Today is September 19th, 2024. The time is 6:09 p.m. This public hearing is being held at an Energy Facility Siting Council meeting in person here at the People's Utility District Meeting Room in Platte Sky, Oregon. This hearing is also being held via a WebEx webinar with a call-in option for those who cannot participate in person or via webinar. Tonight's hearing is being recorded. The presentations, written comments, and oral testimony are part of the decision record for the amendment request for the facility. The purpose of the public hearing is to provide an opportunity for the public, reviewing agencies, council, and the certificate holder, if they wish to do so, to present oral and written testimony on the request and the department's proposed order. The 35-day public comment period on the draft proposed order is scheduled to close at the conclusion of tonight's public hearing. Can you put up the raise it or waive it slide? Pursuant to OAR 345-027-0367 sub 5A and B, please note the following. A person who intends to request a contested case on the proposed order for a site certificate amendment must comment in person or in writing on the record of the public hearing. And a person who intends to raise an issue that may be the basis for granting a contested case proceeding must raise that issue on the record of the public hearing with sufficient specificity to afford the council, the department, and the certificate holder an adequate opportunity to respond to the issue. To raise an issue with sufficient specificity, a person must present facts on the record of the public hearing that support the person's position on the issue. Next slide. So this slide presents the order for tonight's hearing and testimony on the record of the DPO. First, the certificate holder, then members of the public, then members of the council, and finally, the certificate holder will be allowed to respond to any comments. If attendees wish to submit written comments at the hearing to staff, they may do so. I'll call on each person interested in providing oral testimony, starting with the certificate holder, and then members of the public here in person, and then on the webinar, and then on the phone. For any individuals wishing to provide oral testimony during tonight's hearing, for the record, please state the following with your testimony. Full name with spelling, name of the organization or group if you are representing one, and physical mail or email address. Okay, is the certificate holder here tonight, and do they wish to provide testimony?
I do.
Welcome. And can you push the button to turn on your mic? Thank you.
It's on.
My name is David Weber, DAVID, WEBER. I am Vice President of Gas Supply and Utility Support Services for Northwest Natural, the gas company, the certificate holder. I'm going to go through very quickly a presentation which the council has had an opportunity to see some of the slides. And staff has done an excellent job of describing the project. So Northwest Natural has been in business in the Northwest in serving this area for 165 years. We serve 2 million people in Oregon and Southwest Washington with 1,200 employees. We are regulated by the Oregon Public Utility Commission in Oregon and by the Washington Utilities Transportation Commission in Washington State. Next slide. So it's been mentioned here, we store the natural gas in existing sandstone formations that have been sealed by caprock over millions of years ago. That sandstone is porous. It's like beach sand that is packed. If you were able to grab a hold of a piece of this in a core and you squeezed it hard, it would crush. So it's fairly delicate, but that makes it very porous so that the natural gas can be stored in between. These reservoirs held natural gas when it was discovered that gas was produced. So these are depleted natural gas reservoirs. These are not new ones we developed. We follow the regulations of DOGAMI, which for the 40 years we've been there have what I would argue are some of the most stringent standards in the industry. Tubing and packer, which is a very popular term. We've been using tubing and packer in these facilities for 40 years. So these are built to current standards and maintained. And we also follow Pipeline Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, PHMSA's regulations. And they come out and audit us on a regular basis, and we're required to submit information to them. So we have 3 types of wells: observation wells, which are there to see if gas appears in that location; injection withdrawal wells, which is put the gas into the ground and take it out; and we also have what we call observation wells for spill point, to see if gas is leaked into another area. So we're very careful about the gas we put into the ground and how it's maintained within the ground. I know that's out of your scope, but I just thought for a lot of people, you don't see what's going on underneath. So next slide. Underground natural gas storage facility, you've heard quite a bit about already. We have 8 storage reservoirs. We store 21.6 billion cubic feet of natural gas at Mist in 2 different facilities. One you've heard about, Miller Station, and the other at North Mist. And one of those facilities, moving on to the next slide. North Mist was approved in amendment number 11, or RFA 11, and commenced service in May of 2019. It has a single pipeline that was put in place using a lot of horizontal directional drilling techniques to avoid some of the potential wetland issues or digging concerns we might have had down out here, actually not far from here in Clatskanie, out across the floodplain. That serves Port Westward's facility. So Port Westward 1, Port Westward 2, and Beaver. So they have the ability to withdraw gas when they need it, as opposed to taking it from a pipeline to serve those 2 facilities. Port Westward 2 was built to follow wind. So when the wind is blowing too hard or not hard enough, Port Westward 2 can come online and back up the wind and provide electricity services. So it balances out the wind portfolio. That's why Port Westward 2 is built. Next slide. 2 compressor stations, just some pictures as opposed to just looking at them as cartoons from the top. On the left is Miller Station. It's our oldest facility. It's the one that started back in 1980. Fairly landlocked, and it's run out of space, which is why we'd like to have the space north of it to have some space to park and store equipment. The facility on the right, North Mist, was built with a lot more room there. On the upper right-hand corner is where the well pad is. So the well pad and the station are right next to each other. So there's less transmission pipeline between the well pad and the facility itself. 17.5 billion cubic feet in Miller Station, 4 billion cubic feet in North Mist. And you've already heard quite a bit about the compressor. This permit is really to address 3 different things, which you've already heard about. The first for us is these 2 compressors. They're turbine compressors that are 20 years old and have reached their metallurgical end of life, and it's getting very difficult to find parts for them to repair them. And Northwest Natural depends on this storage resource in the winter for 50% of its fuel supply for our customers. So when these equipment goes down, it's a big problem for our customers. So it's very important that we are able to replace these machines, and we want to replace them with equipment that has lots of machines in service so that we'll have more reliable service. That's why we call it the resiliency program. We want Miller Station to be more resilient. Next slide. So we looked at 2 different studies to look at details here to determine what the right approach to take was. So a lot of analysis has gone into this to determine what equipment to replace it with. I think this last slide coming up, trying to go through quickly because you do have a lot of knowledge already. The North Mist resiliency part of this will add additional reservoirs, as you've heard, and additional compression. That natural gas will go through the existing pipeline, other than those pipelines that are required to gather or flow the gas to and from the actual reservoirs themselves. will use the existing pipeline down to Port Westward and connect with the pipeline to give it gas access both directions beyond just Port Westward. So we'll increase that. So there was one question asked about what happens if PGE stops needing natural gas. That natural gas would then have access to the interstate pipeline system, so it could serve other customers with other needs in other locations. That's all we have to say. Hopefully I stayed within my time.
Thank you, Mr. Weber. Are there any clarifying questions? Councilor Graham.
Thank you. Hi, thank you for your comments and presentation. How do you define your core customers? You had a slide that said core customers versus.
So we have residential customers, so I would say core customers are residential, commercial customers, and we have industrial customers. So we have about 100, probably close to 200 industrial customers. So they're very large. But the residential customers, I think we're over 800,000 residential customers or total customers now. So those would be who I would consider core customers. Those are the ratepayers to Northwest Natural.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Okay, thank you, Mr. Weber. That was an excellent presentation. Before I open the hearing up to public testimony, I want to remind the public that prior to the close of the record, you may submit written testimony in a variety of ways: the comment portal, email, and handing in your written comment tonight. As noticed in the agenda, the duration of the time for individual commenters will be 7 minutes, but I'd like to get a sense of the number of people interested in testifying to determine if I need to adjust that time limit. For those in the room, please raise your hand if you intend to testify. Okay. And Nancy, can you tell us, for those that are on the WebEx, please raise your hand feature, and for those on the phone, push *3.
It's like just one person.
Is there a way to tell about the *3?
There's nobody on the phone.
Okay. Okay, well, we don't have a problem with the number of people in. Are there individuals in the room who provided a comment card? I have Joe Kaczynski. That's correct. Okay, welcome. Come on up and we'll take your testimony.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Really? Okay. My name is Joe Kaczynski, JoeKaczzenski. I have a letter that I wrote to Ms. Sloan, but I would like to put it into the record to the council. I'm representing Ms. Birkenfeld Rural Fire Protection District. So on behalf of Ms. Birkenfeld Rural Fire Protection District, I'm writing this letter, comment on Northwest Natural's proposed request for amendment 13, RFA 13, to the site certificate for the Mist Underground Natural Gas Storage Facility. Ms. Birkenfeld RFPD serves as a primary fire protection agency responsible for the Mist storage facility sites. Throughout Northwest Natural's operation at their sites, we have maintained close communication and collaboration with the company. They have demonstrated a clear commitment to the safe operation of their facilities and have a long history of providing support for the Ms. Birkenfeld RFPD. We appreciate the opportunity Northwest Natural provided to review and consult on RFA 13. The proposed construction and new operations outlined in RFA 13 would not result in substantial impacts to Ms. Birkenfeld RFPD's ability to provide fire protection and emergency services. Our agency is prepared to respond appropriately and as necessary to any issue that could arise with respect to construction and operation of the proposed project. Ms. Birkenfeld RFPD looks forward to continued cooperation with Northwest Natural to ensure the safety of the Mist storage facility site and our fire district. Sincerely, Joe Kaczynski, Fire Chief, Ms. Birkenfeld.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We have the person that had raised a hand.
Daniel Shops.
Daniel Scott. Can you hear me, Daniel?
Evening.
His mic.
There you go. We can hear you.
Excellent. I can hear you now. All right. Is it all right if I start?
Yes.
All right. My name is Daniel Schatz. That's DANIEL. My last name is SCHATZ. My address is 29071 Zimmerman Road in Rainier, Oregon. And I'm here to comment against the acceptance of Northwest Naturals Amendment 13 by the Energy Facility Siting Council. I am asking the EFSC for a contested case. I've submitted a formal document that outlines the reasons I'm requesting a contested case. I was told by Kathleen Sloan that I could give additional testimony that would not invalidate or impact my written document, and I would like to do so now. At the end, I will relate it back to the relevant OARs for the EFC, or for the EFSC. My family suspects that the Miss Gasfield underground storage facility has contaminated the state's groundwater, which in turn has affected our domestic wells and others' domestic wells. We have gases including methane, carbon monoxide, and hydrogen sulfide, to name a few, exhaling out of our tap water. We have identified chemicals consistent with natural gas and that have no other point of origin. My family almost died from our exposure to these gases and chemicals. Our lives will never be the same. Our two daughters will never get the chance to live a normal life. I would like to discuss both the failures of the Oregon government and Northwest Natural and Interfin Resources Northwest, who work closely with Northwest Natural. I will start with the state. The Oregon Secretary of State recently audited the state and released a report that documents the state's failures to protect the state's water resources. There are two glaring examples of that. Morrow and Umatilla County. The state has been aware for over 30 years of the groundwater contamination plaguing the residents, but it's still plaguing them to this day. Crook County. This county recently had their groundwater contaminated, they suspect, from mining operations from Knife River Mining Corporation. And Columbia County, Clatsop County, we suspect from the Miss Gasfield underground storage facility. Next, I want to touch on a few of the state's departments and their employees. I'm going to start with Dogami. Bob Houston from Dogami, who was involved with the Miss Gasfield during his time there, recently left his state job to work for Knife River Mining Corporation, the same corporation that is suspected of toxic groundwater contamination in Crook County. Bob Brinkman from Dogami, he was awful to my family, yelling and lying to my wife. He has a history of rubber stamping permits for Northwest Natural and Interfin Resources. And guess what? He comes from the oil and gas industry, from Chevron. Rarari De Starat, head of Dogami, recently left his job at Shell as the senior specialist geoscience researcher to come work for our state of Oregon. When dealing with Crook County, he requested closed-door meetings with Knife River citizen geologists. Where's the transparency there? Where is the citizen engagement? Let's talk about the DEQ. Kevin Weberling from the DEQ lied to my wife about illegal activity happening at the Miss Gasfield underground storage facility. At the same time, as he was writing a notice of civil penalty for illegal waste fluid injections that occurred for almost the whole 2021 year. And guess what? Kevin Weberling, he also comes from oil and gas. ExxonMobil, Marathon Oil, Oxy Oil. Detective Craig Ball with the Oregon State Police. He failed to take our allegations seriously when we presented them to him, including the possibility of a murder of an Oregon citizen by gas asphyxiation. I'm going to move on to the federal agencies. We have enough evidence that a site assessment was warranted, and after the ODEQ declined, the EPA stepped in to lead it. There were several issues and inconsistencies with the EPA employees and third-party contractors. I'm going to touch on a few of those. Mr. Stephen Nguyen of the EPA, who led the site assessment at our property, witnessed carbon monoxide exhaling out of our tap water at 60 parts per million, but refuses to acknowledge it. We have proof of this from a site assessment logbook where he noted the carbon monoxide exhaling, but he refuses to acknowledge it to this day. The EPA also identified an actionable level of lead in the state's groundwater, but Mr. Nguyen is manipulating the lab data to hide those results. And guess what? He also has ties to the oil and gas industry. He received the Chevron Reach Scholarship because one of his parents was a Chevron employee. Monica Tonell of the EPA was there to witness carbon monoxide exhaling out of our home's tap water. Lastly, I would like to move on to Northwest Natural and Interfin Resources Northwest, the only other company that works at the field and has a close relationship with Northwest Natural. To start, Northwest Natural has a greenwashing campaign for methane. They have sued Oregon DQ over the decarbonization environmental program. And according to the latest news report from ProPublica, they've only accumulated 1% of the 5% of renewable energy that they're supposed to have by 2025. Is this just more lies that they're giving to the public? They're also grossly incapable of running their own equipment. A 2017 EN engineering study showed that they had failed systems were evident. Some of the equipment was so foul that it could not be properly inspected. Interfin Resources Northwest, who worked closely with Northwest Natural at the field, was illegally injecting waste fluid throughout the almost entire 2021 calendar year. Interfin Resources has also committed other illegal activities, such as the dumping of drilling mud in unlined pits. The month that they injected the most illegal injection occurred was the same month that my family was melting, losing weight. My wife was going to the emergency room for heart failure concerns. My daughters were 2 and 4 years old at the time of their exposure, the most sensitive times in their lives. They deserve better from our state and government. The children and people still living in those communities, they deserve better. For these reasons and the reasons stated in the submitted document, we ask the EFSC to deny Amendment 13. And I'm going to cite OAR 345-022-002BA. The council shall weigh overall public benefits and any adverse effects on a resource or interest as follows. The council shall evaluate overall public benefits by considering factors including, but not limited to the following. The overall environmental effects of the facility, considering both beneficial and adverse environmental effects. And I'm also going to point you to EFCS Standard 3. Would the facility have adverse impacts on the environment and the community? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Schatz. Any questions from council? Councilor Himes?
Thank you, Chair. I don't have a question, but I do have an observation. The audio was pretty difficult to understand, Mr. Schatz. So is anybody else having an audio issue online?
Her audio is having a little bit of an issue.
Ask Richard if he could hear.
Hey, Councilor Devlin, were you able to hear, the testimony just fine?
I was able to hear, but I could hear in the background like movement and an occasional pop, but I understood everything that was being said.
Okay.
Okay, maybe it's just my connection, but there's a lot of feedback and background noise going on. So just wanted to make
It's like,
aware of that.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, Councilor Devlin?
well, I think there always is some background noise here. It all depends on, if people are moving things around where their mic is, there will always be some. And he did have some distortion in what he was saying, not from him particularly, but in terms of the sound reproduction. But I mean, I don't know if I can't speak for others. I understand Councilor Inez has some issues, but I understood what was being said.
One more thing, I kind of wonder because you guys are hosting this, your mic is always on. So when people are speaking online and your mic is on, that might be part of the background noise that we're hearing.
Yeah.
So it might be that when someone's speaking online, that the room that you're in might need to mute.
Okay. We'll try to do that. We were able to hear okay, and it sounds like Councilor Devlin was. We've done the individuals in the room unless there's anyone else. Okay, and then we've done the person online. And there's nobody on the WebEx or phone.
That would be it.
Okay, so the council has received a 30-day extension request for the public comment period from Columbia Riverkeeper. The council will have to determine if there's good cause in justifying an extension to the public comment timeframe. Council has two options. Either determine there is good cause to justify an extension of the public comment timeframe and approve the request with additional time as determined to be appropriate, or determine there is not good cause to justify an extension of the public comment timeframe and deny the request. So, Council Rowe.
Yeah, I'll just refresh your recollection about when you've had similar requests in the past and talk briefly about a good cause. When council has received these requests to extend deadlines, it's assessed whether there is quote unquote good cause for the extension. Council itself doesn't have a rule that defines good cause. I will briefly talk to you about two other governmental entities in Oregon that do define good cause, and then refresh your recollection about what you've done with a couple of these requests in the past, and see that the way that you've handled them has been consistent with how other agencies define good cause. The Office of Administrative Hearings defines good cause for the purposes of when someone requests an extension, for example, in a contested case. They state good cause exists when an action, delay, or failure to act arises from an inexcusable mistake, surprise, excusable neglect, reasonable reliance on the statement of a party or agency relating to procedural requirements, or from fraud, misrepresentation, or other misconduct of a party or agency participating in the proceeding. The Oregon Employment Department defines good cause similarly, but a little bit more succinctly. It says good cause exists when an action, delay, or failure to act arises from an excusable mistake or from factors beyond an applicant's reasonable control. State good cause does not include one of their examples, not understanding the implications of a decision or a notice when it's received. Examples of recent instances in which council has received requests for extension and considered whether there was good cause for the request. Most recently, at your May meeting this year, you'll recall that when council was considering the DPO on B2H request for amendment 2, received a request to extend the time period for that, and council in that instance did grant a 24-hour extension for comments in DPA on RFA 2 and B2H. The rationale there was we had a fair amount of people that wanted to comment at the hearing. The notice of the DPO had stated that you would accept comments at the hearing, but that notice, unlike the notice, for example, for this hearing, did not state that verbal comments at the hearing might be time limited. So recognizing that people did not realize that they may be time limited at the hearing, you granted a 24-hour extension to provide comments for folks, in particular for people who may have wanted more time for their verbal comments, but ran out of time at the hearing. That's consistent with the definition that I just described to you, the OAH definition that says good cause exists if it's something that the agency did stated with regard to a procedure might not have been clear, might have led someone to have a misunderstanding. Other instances in which you've received similar requests going back to June of 2022 in the Nolan Hills case, the gentleman asked for an extension at this hearing, the DPO hearing. And this is my recollection is he stated, acknowledged he had received the notice in a timely fashion, but hadn't given it its proper attention until shortly before the hearing, and asked for more time so that he could provide additional comments. And you found that that did not constitute good cause. There was nothing that was beyond his control that required an extension of time. Another instance in which you denied a request for extension, according to Hemingway, request for amendment 1. This was in the summer of 23. The commenter stated that she did not understand, based on the notice, that she could comment on changes in conditions, and you did not find that that was good cause. That's consistent with the employment department definition of good cause, which, as I mentioned, states that not understanding a notice when it's received does not constitute good cause. So that's just kind of a primer. You're not bound by these other agencies' definitions, but as you've seen through the examples that I've provided, you have the decisions that you made are pretty consistent or in line with those definitions.
Thank you, Councilor Roth.
Mr. Chair, if I can provide just a little more context about the particular request. So the notice for this public hearing and review of the EPO was August 15th. We received the request by Columbia Riverkeeper on August 22nd that they requested more time. They cited, and this is, we attached the comment to the staff report, and the staff report summarizes the points that they make in requesting the time extension, which are summarized as the length and complex nature of the draft proposed order, the site's extensive history, the number of other permits implicated by the amendment, and that the current timeline falls during a season where many individuals, including agency staff, are taking much needed vacation. So those were basically the reasons or justifications that they provided for a request for 30 additional days. We just received an 11-page comment from Columbia Riverkeeper. It came in an hour or two ago.
They're signing on to a larger letter that was submitted.
Yeah, so several environmental agencies combined on a letter, or comment letter. Now, I'm not saying that they had enough time, but a comment was submitted. So I just want to make sure you had all of the current information in determining whether you believe there's good cause or not, consistent with Patrick's evaluation or description of what you just heard from him.
Could you restate what the third point was that you were making? The first one was a complex DPO. Second one was the site's extensive history.
The third was the number of other permits implicated by the amendment.
Okay.
And then the vacation.
And vacation, yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilor Devon.
just a few questions, actually. I take by this, as staff has indicated, that they received the original notice about August 15th. Did most of the organizations that have now come in on this sort of composite letter also receive notice?
As far as being noticed?
Well, I guess the Columbia Riverkeeper did receive notice of this proposed order, correct? On August, I think, Secretary's August 15th.
For the record, Todd Cornett, I believe so. So we did not send it to them directly. I mean, we did if they signed up on the email notification system. So whether or not the other environmental groups received it at the same time, it depends on if they, and we'd have to go back and see who signed up to receive notices, either of council meetings or of, that particular project. So without looking at that email list, I couldn't be sure, or whether it was, say, Columbia Riverkeeper received it and then forwarded it to those environmental groups. So I have no way of knowing at this point in time.
Okay, a follow-up question, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Councilor Devlin.
In this new letter that has arrived that I believe you indicated it was 11 pages long, are there specifics cited in terms of substantive issues? I mean, the council doesn't have this letter in their possession. I mean, staff may have it, but I don't have it.
Correct. Councilmember Devlin, you don't have it. We just received it and haven't had a chance to send it out to council members. So Ultimately, you will get a chance to review all of the comments, and the draft proposed order, likely at the next council meeting. But, because the public comment timeframe, could conclude at the end of, today's hearing, people could be submitting comments right up into that point in time. So no, you don't have it. We will get it to you as soon as we can, but, which will be today. But you won't have time to review it like prior to the conclusion, I think, of this, council meeting.
Not favoring or opposing their position. If the letter states something substantive under our rules and specific, there might be a chance for them to have a contested case. But if it's just a general, like this first letter, there probably isn't a basis.
Yeah, Councilmember Devlin, we also have not had a chance to review it since it just came in, and neither has the certificate holder. So, we will also send it to the certificate holder. They will have to make a determination of whether they want to hold over their opportunity to respond to comments, to a future date, or if they want the record to close today as well. So that's a choice that they're going to have to make. Next, after you make this vote, we'll go to council's comments on the draft proposed order, not necessarily comments, but the draft proposed order. And then again, at the next council meeting, after the close of the record, you will have an opportunity to review all the comments, the draft proposed order, and provide your own comments to staff for any changes you would like to see in the proposed order.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilor Devlin.
I could see an extension considerably less than a month, but I'd like to hear the positions of the other councilors present.
This is Patrick Rowe with the Department of Justice. To the extent that you decide that there is good cause or there's not, if you could please articulate why you believe there is good cause for the extension.
Mr. Chairman, to legal counsel, I guess my concern is, and I don't know if it qualifies as good cause, I don't know anything in terms of the substance of this 11-page letter that was
Councilor Devlin, if I don't believe that the 11-page letter is relevant to the decision that's before you. The focus, the letter that you should be focusing on is the letter that Columbia Riverkeeper provided and the rationale that they provided for the extension. So you should look at the reasons that they have suggested that justifies an extension and assess whether or not you believe that that qualifies as good cause.
And,
I would. Thank you, Chair Howell. For the record, this is Marcy Grail. In the spirit of what Councilor Rose asked, I don't believe it meets the threshold. I personally feel like, we're here for a public hearing. Thank you, Chief, for commenting. I don't think, yes, I understand there's complexity. I think everything we do at FSEC is complex. I also believe that while I am all for vacation and things, we are never going to have everyone completely lined out to where the world works to meet all the needs. And from observing, since I don't get to participate in B2H, we know that when we push things out, then the next issue will come. So we'll run into hunting season and then we'll run into the holidays. And so I personally am not believing that it meets the threshold based off of what we at FSEC have done previously.
thank you, Councilor Grail. I also, based upon the 4 items of their letter, that it is a complex a draft proposed order, that the site's been, has an extensive history. The number of other permits that are going to be required with the amendment and the timeline for vacations just don't seem substantive enough to me to warrant an extension. Councilor Condon?
Thank you. I would generally, like to extend time, but I just don't see it here. But, yeah, it just doesn't meet the threshold for me either, so. Thank you.
Chair Howe.
Councilor Owens?
Yes, I think after, Council, Patrick had explained, our history in giving extensions and how, as far as good cause, and I don't see anything within public comment period time where there was any confusion in the communication or any errors on part of the department to give a good cause at this time. So I would agree with the consensus to not grant an extension.
Mr. Chair.
Councilor Devlin?
I want to state for the record that I don't put any weight at all in terms of good cause on the comment about vacations, because that's always going to be an issue. And I think Councilor Grill is absolutely right. If you start making exceptions for certain things like that, you're going to end up doing it all the time, and it's going to be very problematic in a public process. Also, the fact that they cite that this is a time when people are going on vacations. I don't really think that the next month going towards Thanksgiving and the Christmas season are going to be any better for many of these organizations. I just hope at this point that the council for the Columbia Riverkeeper, if they do have any substantive comment, have included those. That would be the appropriate thing for them to do, because they know if it's extended, their deadline is today. So hopefully, if they do have arguments that they seriously want to make, hopefully that 11-page letter includes some of them. And I will go along with the council's wishes in terms of not making the extension.
I think we've heard from everybody. Do we have a motion?
Is Columbia Riverkeepers on the call at all, or?
They were.
Who would it be?
I'm just wondering if we're not gonna,
But they were on.
if we're gonna deny, they might wanna comment.
I mean, that's entirely up to you. That's certainly not a requirement.
Yeah, I understand that it kind of threads the need if they're not here. Thank you.
Chair Howell, I'm ready for a motion if you are.
Councilor Grill, ready.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I move that the council deny the request by Columbia Riverkeeper for an extension of the public comment timeframe because they have not provided good cause to justify an extension.
Do we have a second?
Chair Howell, I'll second that motion. Councilor Condon.
Thank you. Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Secretary Cornett, could you please call the roll?
Cindy Condon,
Yes.
Richard Devlin,
Yes.
Marcy Grail,
Yes.
Ken Howe,
Yes.
Katie Imes.
Yes.
Motion carried, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we've taken care of that piece of business. Are there any council members that would like to provide comments to the department or the certificate holder on this application?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Devlin.
To the certificate holder, I appreciate their explanation of what will happen after 2040. I would appreciate some further explanation from them in terms of, obviously, their pipelines and storage facilities are an asset and could be used in other ways. And some of their business sectors, even after the electric sector declines in terms of use of natural gas, may increase. And there are some not too distant states, particularly maybe some of the states, Montana, Wyoming, Montana probably less because they're moving more towards renewables, may be in need of further capability for transfer of gas that maybe Northwest Natural can provide them. But I would appreciate some further explanation from them about how they expect their business may change in terms of the operation of this facility after 2040.
Any other comments from council? So as previously stated, the public comment period ends at the close of the hearing tonight. However, if requested by the certificate holder, the council may grant additional time to respond. So based upon the comments received tonight and on the record, does a certificate holder wish to provide any responses while the record is still open, or would you like to request the record remain open to allow you time to respond?
Tim McMahon here on behalf of the applicant, Storage Law Firm. We would request a 14-day extension to respond to letters. Partly is because we, like you, just received the 11-page letter from four environmental nonprofits, and we haven't had an opportunity to study it. So on the erring a bit on the side of caution, we would request 14 days.
Okay, let me just, that would, if somebody check me here, but I think that would be 2 weeks, which would be October 3rd. And shall we make that at 5 o'clock?
Yes.
Okay, 5 PM, October 3rd. Record's extended for you.
Thank you, sir.
And Mr. Chair, just for clarification, should you want to reduce that, you certainly would be available.
Yeah.
As we're preparing then for the next council meeting, 2 weeks starts to put us in a very difficult time frame to evaluate your responses, draft our staff reports, get that to council prior to the next council meeting. So that may push us out to November. So if you were to shorten that by a week, that would probably be more, available for us to do our job and get it to council so they can do their job. But that being said, is you need the time that you need. So just understand what the potential ramifications are.
No, and I appreciate that, and we will endeavor to have a response back in 7 days, if we can do that. But we will, again, we're, operating a little bit of a void, not understanding just how much we need to respond to. But we will do what we can as quickly as possible, and I appreciate that.
So you're asking for 14, but you're hoping to be done in 7?
Let's call it 10 and we'll hope to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Do we need to have a council action to accept the extension of time? Okay.
I don't believe so.
I haven't heard anyone object, so.
Yeah.
And just one point of clarification. So Councilmember Devlin asked a question, which you certainly could wait to respond to, but you could respond to it now also if you wanted to.
Here.
Yeah, that's fine.
Mr. Chairman, I would actually prefer a written response.
Happy to provide one.
Okay, Councilor Devlin, Mr. Weber said he's happy to provide one.
Yeah.
Thank
you.
Anything else for tonight? I think that is a wrap. So it is now 6:58 PM on September 19th, 2024, in the public hearing and public comment period on the draft proposed order for the request for Amendment 13 of the Mist Underground Natural Gas Storage Facility is now closed.
And just for clarification, the site certificate holder has requested and has received an opportunity to respond to comments within 10 days.
Within 10 days, right?
Okay.
And so the record has it correctly. There's, it'd be like Sunday, the 29th, or we'll make it Monday, the 30th. Okay, with that, the time is now 6:59 59:07, and the September 19th, 20th, 2024 meeting of the Energy Facility Siting Council was now recessed until tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. Thank you all.